Hey everybody, it's Kate here with the Creative Coast. Today is Wednesday, November 18th, and we're here with another lunchtime topic. You got to buckle up today because we're covering 12 months of traffic building goodness with today's lunchtime topic. We're featuring Blake Ellis of Commerce V3. He's going to teach us how to position your e-commerce store for the best results during the holiday sales. Blake is the founder and CEO of CV3. And he's a longtime Savannah entrepreneur and tech enthusiast. He founded Commerce V3 back in 2000 as a more efficient alternative to Yahoo Store for large merchants, and it's grown ever since. CV3 has grown into one of the largest full-service e-commerce shops in the world, offering not only a powerful platform, but a full suite of launch support and marketing services. So, fun fact, Blake is also the former executive director of the Creative Coast, so we're glad to have him back to impart his e-commerce wisdom with us today. So thank you so much for being here, Blake. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Kate and the Creative Coast. And hello, everybody. Good to see y'all. I am going to jump right in because it's already pretty late in the season. And so we've got a lot to potentially do to get our sites ready for the holiday rush. My goal here is to kind of throw out a bunch of really kind of short, quick tips to get your minds going. And if it's something that you've already done or that doesn't really apply to your brand or something, you don't have to worry because a few seconds later, I'll be on to the next tip. I'm going to try not to get bogged down into any one thing. So today's all about generating ideas. I would love it if everybody can leave their mics on, because if dogs are barking and babies are crying, I know that I'm not disconnected and just speaking into the ether. I'm also very happy to stop on any particular slide. If you got a question, just say, whoa, 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 or I think hopefully what people will have is examples. If I show a tip and you have an example of maybe an email you sent that you tested the subject line or whatever, I would love to get people's examples into the discussion today. So without further ado, let's get rolling. I guess give a shout if for some reason you can't see my whole screen, or if something wigs out. As Kate said, I am Blake Ellis. I work for Commerce V3. We do e-commerce stuff. I guess the reason that's important for today is we run our own platform, e-commerce platform. And so we collect a lot of statistics and we see a wide variety of behaviors across a lot of different kinds of B2C brands. So hopefully that will be of use today. I am a fallible person, and so hopefully you're all running analytics and you're looking at those analytics. And if one of these tips today doesn't match the data you're seeing in your analytics, or if you try one of these tips and the analytics tell you that it's an awful tip, always trust the analytics. Don't rely on experts. You can rely on experts to get some ideas. But really, you need to use math to decide if those ideas are ultimately good for your brand. So with that disclaimer, let's take a look at what a typical year looks like for e-commerce. So we are all B2C products. This is an audit we did of a portion of our sales, or our merchant sales, but this is data collected over about 6 million orders. So it's a good gauge of how e-commerce works in general. Some of these products are going to be different kinds of seasonal products. We have pool companies, we have gardening companies that sometimes have bigger amounts of traffic and order in the spring. But then we have a lot of cookies, candies, things like that, that are going to be strong in the fall. But anyway, you can look at this graph and you can see that most people shop while they're at work. You can kind of pretty much count the 52 weeks of the year on this graph. You can also see a little bump for Easter and a little bump for what looks like maybe back to school, or I think there's a holiday in there somewhere. And then of course you can see the big spike during the holiday season. And you can kind of see from this that the holiday season starts ramping up in November. At the beginning of November, it starts to grow, but it really starts to spike right after Thanksgiving. It really only spikes for a few days. And for a lot of merchants, those few days is the make or break time of the year. It really is when they might make 80% of their revenue. So that's a typical year. Let's take a look at what happened this year, because we're kind of in unknown territory. When the pandemic started, or at least when the lockdown started, you can see a rise. And again, this is revenue-based statistics I'm using. I have some visits and stuff like that, but they kind of all line up. But what you can see is that in the spring, people started ordering more stuff online, and they certainly started ordering a lot more stuff online than they'd ordered in the spring of 2019. And then during the summer, it dropped back down, but it never dropped down to where it was the previous year. E-commerce sales remained elevated. I'm sure you've read about this in the news, but this is kind of what it looks like. And then you can kind of see on the right-hand side, I did this a couple of days ago. So on the right-hand side, you can already see that things are starting to rise for the holiday season. And where it's going to go from here, we don't really know. I don't know whether it's going to spike even higher than it spiked before, or if it's going to be spread out, or I don't know what's going to happen. So maybe we'll do a follow-up and I'll let you know what happened. Or I guess we'll all read about it in the news. We'll all know what happened in a couple of weeks. So today I'm going to split these tips into 4 different sections. The first section is going to be all about trying to get visitors to your site. The second section is going to be about trying to turn those looky-loos into actual shoppers, which I define by kind of just getting that first thing into a cart. Then we're going to try to turn those shoppers into buyers by getting them through a checkout. And then we're going to talk about tips that help increase engagement, get people to come back, buy again and again from you. So part 1, generating visitors. It's important to make sure that every customer touch point you have, that you are trying to get your customers' information. I typically would start with an email address because an email address is really easy to ask people for. So if you got retail locations or you go to trade shows, or I guess trade shows are really not a thing anymore, but whatever you do across the boards to engage with customers, you need to make sure that you are collecting at least email addresses. And if you are not, you pretty much have to have a pretty good reason that you're not doing it. And you should probably revisit that decision every year just to make sure that you don't want to start collecting those email addresses. The reason why is we used to call it a house file. I don't know what it's called these days, but in the old catalog days, we called it your house file. That is one of your biggest assets as a merchant. And one of the reasons for that is you're going to be sending out emails. And email is probably by far the fastest and cheapest way to generate orders on e-commerce sites. There are perhaps more effective ways to do it or quickest ways to do it, but they are very expensive. And then there are some, maybe some easier or more long-term boosts and things that you can do, but they are not as fast. So email really can form the heart of a kind of digital marketing plan, but you got to have the house file. You've got to be always growing those emails and having those. So you need to plan for mobile opens. Almost all of us, when we're creating email blasts, we're probably using a desktop computer to do so, and which means we're probably also testing those on a desktop computer. And you can look at your analytics, but I pretty much guarantee you that almost all of your email opens are going to come from people looking at their phones. So you need to make sure that not only do you not make any mistakes with that, but that you really are shooting out messages that resonate with the mobile users on their small screens. We find it overwhelmingly best to use very specific offers. So if you send out an offer saying, an email saying, hey, come check out our new product line, you'll get some response, but you'll get way more response if you say, check out this really specific product that we just launched. And even better would be get 5% off this specific product or get free shipping on this specific product. The more specific you can be, the better your conversion is going to be on that email. And one thing to keep in mind is that the email doesn't, it's not just the email and the call to action within that email, but it's also the endpoint. So you don't want to send out a really great specific promo for a specific product and then link them to your homepage where they've got to search for that product again. I know that sounds kind of like a no-brainer, but we see it all the time where the email, the call to action, and then what we call the endpoint or the target page or whatever, those all need to line up and be consistent and clear. So how do you get people to open those emails? Well, you should be testing your subject lines. There's lots of fancy ways to do this, but you can just do it the unscientific, unfancy way if you want. You can take a group of a section of your customer list and you can send them one subject line and you can send another section a different subject line, and then whichever one performs better, you could test it against a third, or you could just send whichever one performs better to the rest of your user base. And you would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but you'd be, there are definitely subject lines that work better than other subject lines. As you do this testing, you'll probably get used to the kinds of things that work for your customers and your brands. But I don't think I would ever recommend you stop doing this because it's just great data to have. While you're checking the subject lines, check the preview text. In a lot of different email clients, you see a couple of extra lines of text. It's kind of a freebie extension to your subject line. If you don't do anything else, make sure you don't do what's on the top of this slide. I see this a ridiculous amount of time where you get weird code and stuff in the preview text. I would probably aim for something more along the center example on this slide where you've got a subject line and then preview text that complement each other to encourage people to open that email. Doesn't work for all brands, but you can consider video, animated GIFs, things like that. You consider this on the page, but you can also consider this in email. You have to be careful depending on what your customer profile looks like and what kinds of devices they're using. Animation might be something that you can try to see if that will increase your click-throughs. You can, if you have a large house file, you probably have a few reasons to do this, but there are lots of benefits for segmenting offers. You can offer more specific deals to different subsets of your customer base to increase conversion. But even if you're going to offer everybody the same thing, your warehouse will thank you if you can stagger those offerings so that if you've got any kind of bottlenecks in your fulfillment system, that you don't just have, send the blast out to 20,000 people all on a Monday and it takes them 3 or 4 days to catch up on fulfilling the orders. Along with segmenting the offers, we often see merchants repeating offers. I'm sure you've seen this in your own inbox where you get the same offer from the same merchant 2 or 3 times. But I bet you probably also sometimes see that third time come in where it says, this is your last chance. And suddenly you're like, oh yeah, I meant to do that. And you click on that email. And we see that all the time where merchants send out a series of the same offer and they get their largest response at the end when people can't wait any longer. So switching on from email, let's talk about search and other ways to get people to your site. and this is sort of a technical one, but you need to make sure that if you have retail locations that you are coding your pages and submitting them all correctly so that you are represented well in localization style searches. I know I am sounding very mobile centric on this talk, but it really is becoming a mobile centric world and a mobile centric industry that we're in. In general, it's best to assume that people that are perhaps interacting with your brands are on the go and they might be near one of your locations. Another way to reinforce the way things look in the localization settings is to make sure that the name of your company, the address of your company, the phone number of your company, that all this information is consistent. I happen to be a part of a company that is known as Commerce V3 and as CV3. And this is a detriment to what I'm talking about here. And it's kind of a subtle thing, but what Google is a mystery. None of us know what they do, but they certainly seem to value that. I don't know, I guess it's a form of social proof. If your company and your address and your phone number is referred to by other people on the internet in the exact same way, then Google will trust that information more and your localization listings will be better. Don't forget Siri. When you're doing your SEO work and you are trying to decide the kind of phrases people might type in to come to your site, don't forget that you also should kind of brainstorm about the kinds of things they might say into their phone and make sure you're still listing well for that sort of thing. This is not the time to be doing this for this holiday season, but it's something to keep in mind for next holiday season. SEO is a very slow game and it's very powerful because once you do the work and you improve your SEO, it will keep on providing you benefits. This time of year, this is a much more relevant slide. You can literally spend money to make money. Buying links on Facebook or Google Shopping or, name your poison is probably the fastest way to generate orders on an e-commerce site. It's also the most expensive, but it is something that you can use up to and even on your shipping cutoff, in December. If you're behind the 8 ball and you need to generate orders, this is something that you can look into. And again, this is probably something that we can talk about in the Q&A with other people who are experts at that sort of thing. In the same vein, there's a lot of noise out there and it's really difficult to get traction from your normal social media post. So you can pay to boost them. And again, you should probably talk to an actual digital marketer about exactly how to spend this money and whatnot. But I will just say from the e-commerce perspective, go ahead and look at your analytics and don't be boosting posts on a Sunday afternoon if that's not when people are shopping at your store. Make sure that you're spending that money at the times when people are shopping on your site anyway. This is a little pet peeve of ours. Everybody has seasonal products and the obvious thing to do is put them up for the season, then take them down. But you lose all your SEO momentum when you do that. And so I know our platform has a seasonal product option. Most platforms have some form of this where you can remove the products from active shopping, but it doesn't remove the URL and it doesn't change the URL. And this is super important because, in late December this year, when you take your seasonal products off your site, you don't want to take them off of Google. You want them to spend the next 11 months getting indexed and ranked well so that next Christmas, they even have better SEO positioning than they did this year. So that's all about getting people to the site. I'm going to talk a little bit about trying to turn those looky-loos into actual shoppers now that they're on the site. Before I do that, does anybody have anything they want to say about part one?
Hey, Blake, it's Lisa. How are you?
I'm doing great, Lisa. How are you?
Thanks for doing this. And yeah, I know you got a lot more to cover and maybe something you can't do now, but I'm really intrigued by and you said it's something for next year as a follow-up, the getting the vocal look for the Siri and Alexa search.
Hmm.
That's like a whole new category. And I have not seen a lot out there on that.
I was going to tell people to check with you.
No,
So,
yeah, that's a whole new area that I've not, I think it's just a rich area I think we can follow up on, but I don't know if anybody else found that, but I know it's a huge growth area as well, especially with Alexa. Amazon is just like, use Alexa to order everything. She asks me all the time, do you want to reorder this?
so I mean, there, first of all, for the localization stuff, there's all kinds of things you can do coding your site and coding your data feeds and things like that with, rich snippets or NAP, name, address, phone number. You want to make sure things are coded correctly so that you're picked up correctly. But you're right, the Alexa and the Siri and all the voice searches. I think there is a lot of what we've traditionally done in the realm of SEO that helps with that. But I would definitely, it'd probably be a whole nother luncheon to dig into the techniques behind each of these things and, all the specific steps you need to go through to make that stuff work. And you probably need someone else to run that that lunch meeting.
Okay. No, I when you said capture vocalized phrases, it really caught my attention because I talk about it, but I am not it's just a whole new area, but it's growing exponentially. I know that.
Well, we used to sit around and brainstorm, like when we'd start like SEO sessions. All right, well, what are people searching for, right? And you kind of brainstorm, and then you go to those services and you put in and you get synonyms, right? And you come up with your key phrases, right?
Right.
But we always kind of looked at a piece of paper to do that. And we thought through, what are people typing in? In fact, a lot of times we were correcting customers, hey, what you're saying they're searching for is probably not what they're typing, because when you type that, you get this weird thing over here. Like, let's figure out what they're typing. And now it's just evolved, and we just have to stop and say, well, wait a minute, we've come up with our key phrase list. Let's now brainstorm what people are saying into their phone as they're walking down the street. And that kind of gets us started down this road, right? There's probably more things we can do, but if at least we, and I don't know, it changes from brand to brand, but there are brands out there where what people might be saying that they're walking down the street is not the same thing that they're typing into Google. So.
Okay. All right. To be continued, though. Thank you.
To be continued.
Blake, I have a question, and so your platform, so it's not a marketplace like Amazon or eBay, but you're actually providing tools for people to build their own e-commerce stores. That the idea. So it look like theirs, it's not yours, right? So,
that is correct. Well, let me say a few things here. Yes, my experience and the data we're talking about today is all from the perspective of an independent B2C merchant. We support integrations and things with marketplaces, but that's not part of the data I'm showing today. And that's not really where our focus as digital marketers has been. So I probably should have prefaced all of this with, this really is a subset of probably what you're doing with your brands, but it's specifically your direct sales to your customer through your own website. And so what CV3 does and what I'm talking about today, you can relate to, setting up a Shopify store, or something of that nature, doing something with WordPress plugins. If you are trying to sell directly to your customers, not through a marketplace, but directly through to your customers, and you want them to put things into a cart and purchase them, that's kind of where I'm coming from today. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The other thing I will mention is that I tried to be very platform agnostic about the examples I use. So all through this presentation, when you see screenshots and stuff like that, they're not all CV3 customers. You'll see Target, you'll see Walmart. I mean, I tried to find the best representations of some of these tips. And in most of the cases, I don't even know what platform they're using. All right, I will trudge forward. So we used to try to fail gracefully on mobile. Again, I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but we want to primarily design for mobile these days and fail gracefully on desktop, or pick the pithy saying you want. But we really have an opportunity here not to just take what we were doing 5 or 10 years ago and shrink it down, but to come up with new ways to reach people on mobile. So I think it's lazy to just shrink something down or have columns collapse. Sometimes you've got a million things to do, and that's what you need to do for the moment. We'll come back to this thought, but certainly always be thinking of what you can do for your mobile customers that's more unique, if not from a process perspective, but at least visually. When you're working on mobile storefronts, it is best to save your creativity for particular places. Like I said, we're talking about direct sales to our customers through our own websites. So each of our websites is a different entity. It's probably going to look different. It's going to have different fonts and colors. And we want some of that to reinforce our own branding. But at the end of the day, you've got millions of people wandering around the internet trying to understand how all these different sites, all these little mini pieces of software work. And so doing things the same way that other e-commerce sites do them is a good idea, because you want to take that cognitive load off the user. You don't want them trying to think through, how does this website work? You want to make that invisible and get them straight to the products. And so a specific example of that is what we call the standard header. Your name's going to be up there. You're going to have a search feature. You're going to have some kind of cart. You're going to have some kind of hamburger menu that opens up to show you more of your categories or more of your options to get to different pages. This is not the place to get creative. If somebody on your creative team wants to come up with a new magnifying glass design that is a new metaphor, I don't know that this is where you want to do it. E-commerce sites are kind of, by definition, you're trying to, you certainly want to personify the brand, but you're really trying to immediately get the customers to think about the products, not the software. Using these conventions, the more of these conventions you can use, the better. What shows up on your screen when you first get to a site, whether it's a desktop site or a mobile site, what you see is above the fold. What you don't see, and you have to swipe down to see, is below the fold. It's an old newspaper metaphor, but it still applies. What's above the fold is going to be super important, and what's below the fold is likely never going to get seen by your customers. So it's really important when you're planning things out and designing and laying things out on your site to think of things in terms of above the fold versus below the fold. In general, you want to put your primary pathways, your primary funnel above the fold, and then everything else below the fold. With that in mind, something you can do really quick for the holiday season this year is to make sure that your most popular categories, your most profitable categories are sorted to the top. If you have 30 different top level categories on your e-commerce site, I'd probably want to talk to you about getting rid of most of them. But at the end of the day, the top 3 or 4 are going to be the ones that everybody clicks on, and you're going to want to put a lot of thought in making sure that the right categories are at the top. I would try to argue that you should get rid of all the other categories, but that never works. you know, it's the internet, and with drop shipping, you can have 100,000 products on your site. But you really have to think about categorization on your site as a funnel. And more importantly, people have very limited attention spans. And so your first few categories, I'm not going to pick a number, 2, 3, 4, it's something along there, are the ones that are going to get the most clicks or taps or whatever. So when in doubt, remove it. Or put it somewhere else, or put it in a subcategory, or put it in the product search. I'm not telling you to take those products off, but you really don't want your massive ability to drop ship to get in the way of your core funnel. A way to look at this is the old 3-layer rule, where, you know, I come to your site and, you know, how many clicks or taps does it take for me to get to a buy button? You know, if I click on a category, do I see the product right there, or do I see subcategories? And then if I click on that subcategory, well, now do I see products and buy buttons, or do I have to click, like, how many clicks does that take? And if you can get that number down to 3, that's, you know, that's going to be more productive for you than higher numbers. It's all about getting to what they're there for. So this is a combination of the click path through the site being efficient, and then the display of what it is you're selling being, you know, visually amazing. And so this is an example of a website I found a couple years ago where you know, the minute you got to the site, it was, you know, one tap to start throwing things into a cart, and everything was big and visual. And I'm not sure anybody really needs Band-Aids that make your wounds look worse than they are, but it certainly drew me in, mainly because it was just so quick. Again, along the same lines, you know, we're taught from an early age with desktop computers to use lots of words because we have lots of real estate and we have SEO and we have all these things. But when it comes down to mobile, we've really got to stop doing that. You know, pictures are really where it's at, and the less words, the better. In fact, you know, here's a site where they even got rid of the product names. So if you can possibly do stuff, if you can possibly do without stuff, get rid of it. If you have to have it, put a buy button on it. There are lots of other reasons to have blogs and have about us pages and have privacy policies and have all this other stuff on your site to distract customers from the core buying funnel. But that's all it is. It's distractions from your buying funnel. So I'm not telling you to take this other stuff off your site, but if you can add products to those areas, that would be my preferred way of doing it. But at the end of the day, if what you're doing here is trying to move product, then, you know, a privacy policy is a distraction. Now, your lawyer is going to say, keep the privacy policy, and they're probably right. You kind of have to go through every page on your site that isn't selling something and make sure you have a pretty dang good reason for it to be there. Nowadays, people will walk down the street and start shopping on your website, and then they actually might walk into your store and poke around, and then they might actually go home that night and actually place their order. And so certainly it's important to make sure that whatever branding and design that you have remains consistent. You don't want to, again, confuse people that they were on a mobile site that was pink, and now that they're on their computer, it's green, and are they on the right place, or have they gone somewhere else? You don't want any of that to happen. I mean, we'll skip this one. Don't build an app unless you really have a fantastic reason to build an app. I'm always amazed by the number of shopping apps that are out there, and I suppose maybe they're making some big brands money, but there are just so many more things that we can spend our money on, like digital marketing, that is gonna provide a lot more bang for your buck, unless you have a really specific reason to need an app. A bit controversial. I hate pop-ups. I know a lot of people hate pop-ups, but they definitely work on desktop. When you first get it just astounds me when I first get to a brand new site that I've never been to before and they pop up asking for my email. I always say the same thing, like, why? I don't even know what you're selling. Why? Would I know to give you an email? Well, they work. That technique is done enough times and a lot of analytics are measured. Having those pop-ups work to collect email addresses. But you have to be very careful about it on mobile. You've got less real estate, smaller screen, blah, blah, blah. You want to be really careful about watching your analytics to see how that's doing. If you can't delete stuff, accordions are a great way to shrink it up where users don't see it at first. And then if they want to delve into more details, they can click a plus sign and take a look at more information. Keeps more things above the fold. I can't believe this slide is still in this deck. Every time I do talks like this, I keep thinking I can stop worrying about Flash, but people keep doing stupid stuff. So keep an eye on the Google Search Console, constantly be testing your site on all different devices and make sure that you don't accidentally have errors somewhere. Again, shrinking things down, not a great idea. If you have to pinch to zoom to use your e-commerce site, I would encourage you to lay it out in a different way. Having sidebars or columns or anything else on a mobile device just isn't going to work and your conversion is going to suffer. Social buttons is a bit of an iffy topic. We all want to make sure that people share our brands around the internet and get more customers to our site, but we don't want to sacrifice conversion. And people are notoriously, well, attention spans are notoriously low, especially on mobile devices. And so we don't want to be sending people off to Twitter and not come back to place their order. So just be careful where you place these social buttons and how they're used. A good thing for 2020, shipping is going to be a real concern this year. It's always a good idea to allow customers to estimate shipping, try to find out when they can get products and how much it's going to cost before they get in the checkout. If they're on a mobile phone and you can figure out how to do it, make sure that you try to show them, shipping options related to where they are and use location data as much as possible. Also nearby stores, especially if shipping is going to be the kind of concern I think it's going to be this December. It's going to be important to point out if people can come into a store to pick something up, where those stores are. When you're designing for mobile, your designers probably know this, but you can really make sure that the buttons that you use are sized properly, and in particular provide feedback so that people know they tap on them. And so I just mean, if you're tapping on something and it changes color or something like that, that's going to be a big hint that they've done something right and they're not just repeatedly tapping on things. So a lot of scientific data behind how people use touchscreens. I just mentioned this visual feedback for when people interact with your site. Low-hanging fruit, it is a phone, so make sure that when they see your phone number, they can tap it and it places a call. Probably another good thing to have working for 2020. It's likely to be a very confusing shopping season for customers. There's likely to be some pretty big discrepancies on how long things take to get to different regions and whether your store fronts are even open. We talk about responsive design for mobile, but one thing sometimes people forget is when images shrink down for mobile, if there's text inside of that image, it's not going to be responsive. It's part of the image, it's going to shrink down. So if you have products, t-shirts or custom products or things that include text, just make sure that the representation on mobile devices is correct. Either you can still read the text or the text is not needed to be read. Promos, we talk all day about all the different kinds of promos that work, but these ribbon promos that people put at the top of websites work great. They work great on desktop. They work even better on mobile. You can make sure they're included on every page. It's a great way to let people know about site-wide promos, shipping promos. It's a great way to let people know about shipping cutoff dates, anything that kind of applies to everybody across your whole site. And you can do it in a way that doesn't take too much screen real estate. I need to speed up. What part are we on? Make sure your promos work on mobile. Make sure that you're not intentionally removing things, promos on mobile. We could talk all day long about product search. We've talked so far about navigating categories down to product pages, but depending on, you can check your analytics, but I would say if you don't know, start with 50-50. There's, half of your customers are going to be the type that search instead of burrow. So make sure your product search is available on every page and is working well. We're on a mobile device. Nobody wants to type. Make sure that you are helping them type when they put in their searches, that you're suggesting things. When you get to the results page, you can use filter and sort to quickly navigate results. And so if somebody searches for something and they're bringing up too many results, by tapping on a filter or a sort, they can get to where they want to go more quickly. Back to imagery, product images are just, I can't emphasize enough how important product images are, and that they're good images and that they're well done and that they're saved correctly for the web. It really is the primary factor that people are going to use to decide whether to add things to their cart. So therefore, having more images is better, and trying to fit images into all the different places becomes important. If you've got 2,000 product images and you're having to save them at different sizes and stuff like that, talk to your designer and take a look at the possibility of using square images. They're actually pretty flexible. You can use them in a lot of places. You can use them on social media. They fit great on mobile devices. They tend to do really well if you've got a lot of different contexts for those images. If you're doing image galleries, that's great. It's going to help customers to see all the different sides of your chair. Just make sure that when you swipe or tap or move the page up and down, that those galleries are working really well. They're finicky little things, and especially on phones, and you want to make sure that, again, you want to keep people focused on the product, not the software. You don't want them trying to figure out what they did wrong and why the picture disappeared or whatever. This one is a little bit dicey. We all have products where you have to pick small, medium, and large, or you have to customize it in some way or pick the color. And but it can become a chore to add something to a cart. And so consider trying to come up with ways to just enable a one tap to add. And almost all of these ways are going to come down to offering default options. So the only way to add a t-shirt to a cart with one click is if you default to a size and default to a color. And so those defaults may cause huge problems in your customer support department, and you may choose not to do it. But it's something that you definitely should go through the thought exercise of and see if you can come up with ways to minimize the number of taps it takes to get things in a cart. People have short attention spans on mobile. They seem to be much more inclined to tap on things that are more aggressive. So there's no need to beat around the bush. Buy now is perfectly acceptable these days on mobile. You want to keep those buy now buttons above the fold. Again, we've talked about the fold before. Keep it where it's important. This is going to be a huge deal this year. It's a big deal every year, but even more so this year. You need to check with FedEx, UPS, Post Office, whoever you use for shipping, because what their policies are this year are probably different than last year, and you don't want to be caught unawares. A good example is, is UPS going to pick up ground shipments on the Friday after Thanksgiving, right? That's coming up. In past years, they've had different policies for that. I don't know what their policy is this year, but you know, as merchants, you should make sure that you know with your shipper what's going to work and not work. And you're going to have to convey that to your customers. So you want to brainstorm ways to capitalize after that shipping cutoff in December, especially since this year it might be awful early. Shippers are already maxed out because of the pandemic. And so how long they're going to be able to take Christmas orders and get them into hands by December 25th is still kind of up in the air. So there are lots of ways to come up with ways to adapt for these late shoppers. This graph, the left side of this, the graph on this page shows what you saw before, which is the ordering activity. The clip on the right shows the visiting activity. And I put this in here to point out that the visiting spikes don't actually line up with the ordering spikes. And so where did that kind of late visiting spike come from that didn't order? And that is probably last minute shoppers who are realizing it's too late to get their goods by Christmas. I'm mixed in with a few people looking for those post-Christmas sales. Curbside pickup, obviously a big thing this year. This is going to be really important if you get to a point where you can't ship something to somebody by Christmas, but perhaps they can come and pick it up. So important to convey that to your customers. Gift certificates, always a great last minute gift. You know, no matter what year you're in, probably going to be a bit bigger this year. If people are confused about all this stuff, you can experiment with live chat. It's an easy way to possibly help people try to decide if they can still get things by Christmas. While we're talking about this stuff, there's no reason why you can't set up your shipping rules right now. You really want to be testing these this week, not next week or the following week or the week after that. Make sure that all of your shipping, and while we're at it, your promos are all set up now, and that you've tested them, and you've tested them all the different devices, and they're automated. And you know, that way when it comes to December and you're super busy doing other things, you don't have to worry that, you know, your promo is going to roll on and off at the right time. When does Cyber Monday start and stop? Most importantly, when does it stop? What we notice from traffic trends is you see a lot of people come in on Cyber Monday and shop, and then you see a huge wave of people come in the Tuesday morning after Cyber Monday is over. And so if you just go in and put your Cyber Monday promo to expire at midnight on Monday night, what happens when all those people who wake up the next morning and are like, oh crap, I forgot to place that order? They come back to your site Monday morning. You might want them to not get the promotion. It might be that good of a promotion. What usually we see is we see people trying to expire their Cyber Monday promotions at noon on Tuesday or even you know, on Wednesday, in order to catch the stragglers coming in who didn't place their order on Cyber Monday. Cross sells and upsells, always a great way to generate larger orders. The obvious example of this is putting related products on product pages, but you can put them on cart pages. You can even put them on the checkout thank you page after a person has completed an order. Is a great time to get them to add another thing to a cart and place another order. It happens. All right, do I have time to keep going, or I guess I have a few more minutes, Kate?
You got 10 minutes, but if we want to go over, we can do that if people want to stay on and have time. So.
I'll go faster. All right, so now that we've got things in the cart, let's talk about some things to get them through the checkout. Some of this stuff's going to be more technical stuff anyway. Obviously, we've mentioned this before during the product search. Let's make sure people don't have to type too much. Address verification is a great thing to have on your site anyway for a lot of reasons, and you might as well use it to prompt people's addresses so they can just start typing their address and it'll fill in the rest. It's a great way to reduce the typing. Promo codes are kind of crazy because you get a promo code in an email. Hey, use this promo to get, 20% off or whatever. Well, then you click on the email and it launches Safari on your phone, and now you're on your web browser and you're looking at the product, and then you add it to the cart, and now you're going to the checkout, and now it's asking you for that promo. Well, can you remember what that promo was? Or are you going to have to like double tap the button and go back over to your email, and oh, you've got a new email from, your brother, and you've got to debunk it on Snopes, and oh, wait, now I got a text message from somebody, and, people get distracted on phones. And so coming up with short, memorable promo codes is a great way to kind of have fun with people, but more practically to cause them to remember it for the 5 or 10 minutes it takes to get into your checkout. This is going to get more controversial, but if you can just show them the promos and let them add them automatically, that is going to be even better. People talk about promos as super secret things, and I get that, but everybody probably has a baseline group of promos that they wouldn't mind pretty much everybody using. In fact, my third choice would be even to share promos, so that, customers coming with promo codes feel more special. They feel like they're getting a deal. And if the deal is such that you don't mind everybody getting it, at least for a certain period of time, sharing those promos are a great way to get more sales. We usually tell people for all these coupon sites or whatever, where you search these sites on the internet for promo codes, go ahead and stop fighting it. Go ahead and make sure these sites all have some basic promo codes for your brands that maybe give 5% off. You want to make sure that you're not giving the super fancy, employee discount promo codes to these sites, but go ahead and seed these sites with some basic, 5% off promos or shipping over $100 free promos, because people will feel special and they will, I've hacked this promo. I will come in and spend money with you. Make sure the proceed to checkout button is prominent. I would even make it sticky so that as you're swiping up and down on your phone, at least once you've had something in your cart, it's easy to always get to the checkout. I'm sure you've noticed on Amazon, it's really hard to get out of their checkout once you're in it. It's really annoying, but so are pop-ups and spam and therapy, but they all work. So once you get someone into your checkout, stripping out any distractions is a good idea. Along these lines, you only want to ask for the fields that you definitely have to have fulfill the order. These will be surprisingly fewer than you might think. Label your fields clearly. Context becomes important on mobile, because if you're swiping up and down and you're putting in a zip code, was it the billing zip code? Was it the shipping zip code? So you may not be able to see even on the screen what section you're in. And so it's really important to think through how things are labeled in the checkout. Autocorrect on personal fields can be problematic. My name is Blake, not baked or bland. And so having to continually redo these is a waste of time. Popping the right keyboards. If you're typing in a zip code, you want the number, keypad, etc. This makes it easier for customers to get through the checkout quickly. Design, keep things tight vertically so that people can get through it faster and not feel so overwhelmed. Progress bars are a great way to keep people from feeling overwhelmed, and they don't have to coincide with actual web pages. They can coincide with, if you've got a one-page checkout, you might want it up there to coincide with the section of the checkout they're in. Security, like this screenshot shows a button that's labeled checkout securely instead of just checkout. That can often make people feel more comfortable checking out, especially on mobile phones. You can also use testimonials and customer reviews to imply that things are secure and that they're not going to have a problem. Checkout editing is a constant source of discussion, and it really is a design hurdle, but there are ways to make your checkout work well in case someone's made a mistake. They get they get far into their checkout and they realize they want to change the ship to, or they want to change something that's make it easy to pop back and fix that. Alt checkouts are always a big deal. Certainly in 2020, they're an even bigger deal. You want to make sure that when I go into your checkout as a buyer, that if I am on a device that supports something quick, that it works. And that may vary from device to device. And I know you may end up paying higher fees with some of these, but at the end of the day, you're going to capture a lot more orders if people don't have to type throughout that checkout. Saving carts works great if people are shopping on their phone and want to complete the order at home, and also sharing with friends and family members. Help, we've talked about live chat briefly, going to be really important this year to make sure you help people get through your site. Abandoned cart, we could talk all day long about abandoned cart. You want to make sure that you collect the email address when you first enter the cart, and then if they don't complete that checkout, that you send them follow-ups. Sorry, you had a problem, come on back and finish your checkout. You probably want to turn up the volume of or lower the time frame on these during the holidays. If somebody abandons their cart a few days before your shipping deadline, you want to make sure you get those abandoned cart emails out fast enough so that they can come back. Obviously, all the things on your site, automated and manual, that help people check their order status, shipping numbers, look things up. Make sure you test those now because people are definitely going to be using them in December. All right, engagement. Don't forget that you have promos other than your email blast. You've got order confirmations. You've got abandoned cart emails. You're soliciting product reviews. You've got lots of opportunities to sell through email. You screw up, your site went down, or you did a promo code that was wrong and you had to cancel it. Use these as opportunities to reach out and offer even more promos. And if you do everything perfectly, you might still want to pretend you had a problem because people respond to these sorts of things. Unsubscribes is one of the hugest missing opportunities I see all over the internet. Whenever you unsubscribe, you get this white screen that just says, unsubscribe successful. And like, that's the last interaction that you had with that brand. So it's a great opportunity to make sure that your last impression is a good one because people come back. Anything you can do with video or social, to engage people. People like to feel like insiders. There's some really simple things you could do. A lot of our customers do facility tours anyway. How is the chocolate made, or whatever, and you may think it's not exciting, but your customers probably would love to see it. In fact, it could be something as simple as the sun coming up that can make for a great social post, and you can talk to your digital marketing, social media people all day long about this stuff. It's any excuse to communicate is going to work. Share product photos, especially on Pinterest and stuff like that. Target nearby customers. If they're on mobile devices and you can tell they're walking by your store, there are things we could possibly get into there. Designers might want to use filters on some of your product photos and your social media accounts to provide kind of thematic ways to relate to your brand. The internet is a horrible place. You're going to get criticized on social media. It's important to respond quickly and with humor as best as you possibly can to defuse situations and just make people feel good about your brand. Utilize context. We're in a pandemic. There's probably a snowstorm. If there's a snowstorm across the Midwest and you can segment your customer base and send them a promo for sweaters, that would be well received with high conversion. If you're sending out an email for, for popcorn or for pajama bottoms, and you're sending it out at 8 o'clock at night, well, people are probably in front of Netflix watching a movie. So there's all kinds of different contextual clues that you can use to try to increase conversion on emails. And as a final couple of thoughts today, we really want to be preparing all year for Cyber Monday and the holidays. So take what I've said today and put it in your pocket, and come January, go ahead and start preparing for 2021. And remember, it's not a violin. It's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. And it's not something you can't sand down and refinish in a different way. Go ahead and tweak your site every day to make it better. Your conversion rates will thank you. And that's it. Thank you. Whew, ding.